What's good, gamers? Today we're gonna get into yet another Ashes of Creation video. This one is gonna be a little bit different than my normal videos as it's mainly gonna focus on bosses. However, bosses are gonna be included in PvP, so this is still sticking to my general idea of my channel. With the Alpha 2 right around the corner, I thought that now would be a great time to just go ahead and go over some of the bosses that we know that we're gonna have in Alpha 2, such as, world bosses, dungeon bosses, and even mini bosses. Now, we know for a fact that we're gonna have the Wood Dragon, the Ice Dragon, and even the Fire Dragon in Alpha 2. But I also wanted to touch on some of the other bosses that a lot of people don't know that we're gonna have in the game. And if you do already know about them, that's fine. Send it to one of your friends who doesn't. And who knows, you might just get one more person to game with come launch. In Ashes of Creation, we have nodes, and these nodes will be influenced by certain types of races. Say for instance, an elven race decided to get a node up to level 5. Well, if that node was next to a volcano, then you have the ability to spawn possibly a fire dragon. Whereas if a dwarven influence got up that node, it may not turn out to be anything until maybe level 6, or you might get a hidden dungeon that wasn't there before. This map will ever be changing as nodes are built up and destroyed, and race influence is different by whoever gets that node up. The game is going to change, and that's amazing to create content from getting stale. And that's a problem that a lot of developers seem to have an issue with. They create content and it's dead 3 months later or whenever they put out a new update. And Intrepid's trying to fix that. I really enjoy the approach that they're taking. Well, let's get into the rest of the video, guys. Enjoy. Raid bosses. Big bad motherfuckers. These things will fuck you up. You need to have your whole guild, your guild's alliance, your guild's alliance's alliance, everybody to kill these bad boys. Now I know it might not look all that challenging due to Steven's poor demonstration of gameplay and obviously hacking, but we all saw when, he wiped in the first few live streams, so he just eventually turned on God mode. But that's okay, because we don't need Steven to be good at games, we just need him to make a good one. And you're on the right track, bud. Ashes of Creation legendary world bosses will be extremely difficult, and they will have different stages based on their current health. Now it's currently planned that we're going to have between 12 to 15 raid bosses in the world. That's a lot considering New World had I don't know, none except for that fucking turkey event, which was honestly a really cool idea if they had capitalized on it more and, given us more content similar. But nonetheless, Ashes is picking up the ashes off the floor and turning them into something marvelous. The world bosses in this game look insane, man, and I cannot wait to get into it. Currently, the list of world bosses that we know of that we're gonna have are the Brood Queen, Cyclops, Elder Dragon of Flame, Elder Dragon of the Tundra, Elder Dragon of the Wood, and the Negalith. Now, it's important to note that these are going to be the only way that we can get legendary equipment. Now, Negalith in particular is going to be a extremely large boss. You're going to need tons of ships and tons of people in order to take this thing down. We don't have a lot of information on it yet since it's not going to be out until Alpha 2. But be sure to check out this video on Oceans if you're interested. Steven said that there will be in-depth raiding that has multiple stages and it will be extremely difficult. But that some of the content, groups of like 9 and below will be able to do, and that there shouldn't be a tiered level of content that players can constantly strive to accomplish. If there's no ladder of progression and everything is flat and all content can be experienced, then there's no drive to excel, so they want to lock off some of that content to the more hardcore players. They've said it many times, this game is not for everyone. You will not be able to partake in every bit of content in the game, but that makes sense if you're not a top tier player. You have to give those top tier players and guilds something to strive for, otherwise they're gonna get bored and just quit because it's the same mundane things over and over again. As a self-proclaimed top tier player in pretty much every game that I play, this looks really good. I mean, I don't want everybody to be able to do the same things that I'm doing every day if I'm putting in 2-3 times the amount of time that they're putting in. Some of you might disagree with this, but there's only one thing that I can really say to you. Get good. There will be plenty of other content that you can partake in as a casual gamer. But you can't expect to get that top tier level of gear without putting in that top tier level of commitment. That's something that games have just gone away from over the last 15 years, man. They're catering to the casual working class person, and I get that, but it doesn't mean that every single game that comes out needs to be that way, and I am so glad that Ashes of Creation understands that. But that's enough ranting, let's get into the next topic. Alright, now let's go ahead and dive into a topic that pretty much every single player will be experiencing, at least in some way, shape, or form during their journey in Vera. That's right, it's time for dungeon bosses. Now, when it comes to the types of dungeon bosses that we know about, currently we only know about 2, and that would be the Pyroclastic Worm that you're seeing on screen now, and the Timeless Protector. But, like with all things Ashes of Creation, I'm sure that we can expect to see even more come Alpha 2. Now, keep in mind that Dungeons and Ashes of Creation will range in size and will mostly be open world. Open world dungeons will be populated to facilitate multiple groups within the dungeon. 80% of the dungeons in the world will be open world, and 20% of them will be instanced. So you and your boys will definitely have to keep watching your backs to make sure that somebody's not coming to try and fuck up your grind spot. And keep in mind that the further that you delve into the dungeon, the harder the dungeon's gonna get. So you may be able to kill the trash or the first boss of a dungeon, but the further that you get in, it's gonna get more and more difficult. Now in Alpha 1, they had approximately 6 or 7 dungeons, so hopefully in Alpha 2, we'll be able to see closer to 10. Especially with the map being larger. We've got a massive portion of content added to the ocean, as well as just the map in general. Which brings us into our final topic of the video. Regional, or world bosses. When it comes to world bosses, or regional bosses in Ashes of Creation, in Alpha 1 we actually had a much larger list than we had when it comes to dungeons. We had mobs such as the Adolescent Dragon of the Wood, the Adolescent Flame Dragon, Daughter of Depravity, It Before Whom All Tremble, It Who Rends the Sky, It Who Sunders the Land. If you didn't notice, all 3 of those are ancients that are pretty much the same mob with different mechanic. Son of Tundra, and finally, Sorrow's Hunger. Now, it is important to keep in mind that the difficulty of PvE content will adapt based on the performance of the raid or group. So if you do really well in a raid one week and you go back the next week, it's going to be harder than it was the previous week to promote more challenging content that isn't just the same thing over and over again and stale. And that's not all that we have to keep us from getting bored. Ashes of Creation is going to utilize an adaptive AI, which means that different encounters with similar creatures will yield different player experiences. So basically the bosses are scripted to do different things throughout the boss fight than some other player that fought them. This means that you're not just gonna be able to use a guide that old Billy Bob put up on YouTube to defeat that boss. Some of the things may apply, but the order in which the spells or damage comes out from the boss will be different. And you may see spells in an encounter that you won't see in the next encounter. Just yet another way that Ashes is proving that it's the future. This is MMORPGs. This is what we've been waiting for years, man. They're combining state-of-the-art technology with the knowledge of all the previous game's failures in the past. And if they do it right, man, this is really gonna be something special, and I hope that you're here for the ride with me. With everything that Intrepid and Steven has showed us, I mean, what more can you ask for, really? This is my dream of an MMORPG put into a reality. I mean, hopefully, we'll have to wait and see, but until then, make sure you guys drop a like, subscribe, and share it to a friend that might be on the fence about the game and hasn't decided if he wants to play. Who knows? Might just get you one more person to play with come launch. Alright, I'll catch you later, man.